Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today at Frier Levitt, Navigating Uncertainty in Tirzepatide Compounding, Understanding Current Status for 503A and 503B Compounding. Frier Levitt, our firm was established back in 2000, and we are a national boutique and healthcare and life sciences firm, assisting stakeholders in both industries, including 503A and 503B outsourcing facilities and other physician groups as well. And today's webinar will be conducted by myself as well as my colleague, Martha. Martha, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Martha Mori. I'm senior counsel at Frier Levitt. I'm a pharmacist attorney. I've got over 20 years of experience representing pharmacy clients in the area of food, drug, cosmetic law, regulatory compliance, and intellectual property. I head up the IP group at Frier Levitt, and I'm admitted before the USPTO. My practice focuses on pharmacy and FDA regulatory compliance. I represent 503A pharmacy compounders and some 503B outsourcing facilities. And I focus on Section 503A, state-specific compounding requirements, assessing compounding practices for state and federal regulatory compliance, including 797, 795. We look at advertising and promotion, and I also have years of experience as a compounding pharmacist for a New York City hospital.
Thank you. Hi, folks. Again, my name is Dae Lee. I'm one of the partners and pharmacist attorney at Frier Levitt. I represent independent providers, including pharmacies, 503A compounding pharmacies, 503B outsourcing facility, as well as other stakeholders in the pharmacy industry. In today's webinar, we're going to discuss the Tirzepatide, the status of Tirzepatide, and what it actually means, the ability of 503A and 503A compounding pharmacies and 503B outsourcing facilities' ability to compound prescription drugs containing Tirzepatide. And we're also going to explore what it actually means in terms of the risk that that may be presented to 503A compounding pharmacies. Before we begin, a few housekeeping items. This program is being recorded, and we'll send you a link to the on-demand version following the webinar. And the content of this program is for informational purposes only and does not constitute legal advice. And we encourage you to consult your legal counsel for specific guidance related to your unique circumstances. And you're more than welcome to contact us after the webinar if you have any questions or if you are looking for any legal advice or opinion relating to Tirzepatide or just general pharmacy issues. And also, we're not taking a live question today, given the time limitation. So feel free to reach out to us with any questions that you may have. Alrighty, so 506E shortages and beyond. As you may know, semaglutide has been on the shortage list for, I believe, over 2 years now, and Tirzepatide had been on the shortage list for about little over a year. And before FDA decided to remove Tirzepatide from the shortage list. So what does it mean? If the drug is not on the shortage list, then you cannot, you're not allowed to compound essentially a copy of the commercially available product. And there are narrow exceptions that is applicable to 503A compounding pharmacies, but for 503B outsourcing facility, if the drug is on the shortage list, you can't compound. And, of course, there is like a 60-day grace period for 503B outsourcing facilities. But at the end of the day, if the drug is removed from the shortage list, then 503B outsourcing facilities cannot compound. And more than likely, FDA will take enforcement action against 503B outsourcing facilities in general. Okay. Now, flipping to the 503A compounding pharmacies, as I indicated before, there are certain exceptions, whether it be medical necessity or converting the product into something that is not essentially a copy of the commercially available product. So what happened on October 2nd? On October 2nd, FDA removed Tirzepatide from the shortage list, and it created a lot of confusion among the stakeholders, including 503A compounding pharmacies, as well as 503B outsourcing facility, but more importantly, patients. Patients, I mean, to my understanding, they are still having very hard time locating and then trying to obtain the brand version of Tirzepatide products. So all these patients have been relying upon 503A compounding pharmacies to receive their medication. But once FDA made a decision to remove Tirzepatide from the shortage list, 503B outsourcing facilities couldn't compound anymore. 503A compounding pharmacies were forced to fill the prescriptions within the narrow exceptions. Otherwise, they would be in violation. Then the outsourcing facility association, shortly after the FDA removed the Tirzepatide from the shortage list, filed a lawsuit challenging the FDA's decision to removing the Tirzepatide from the shortage list. And then FDA, I want to say, in my opinion, caved. They filed unopposed motion to remand the case and also stay enforcement. But in that motion, and because the case was filed by the Outsourcing Facility Association, FDA did not mention anything about the the 503A compounding pharmacy's ability to compound Tirzepatide, which, in my opinion, created more confusion. So at least on or after October 2nd and after the FDA filed an unopposed motion, up until recently, everything was up in the air in terms of 503A compounding pharmacy's ability to compound the Tirzepatide products. At the same time, shortly after the FDA removed Tirzepatide from the list, Eli Lilly started sending out cease and desist letters to stakeholders, including 503A compounding pharmacy, 503Bs, telemedicine companies, and it added more confusion, frustration in the supply chain. Given the circumstances of the status of 503A compounding pharmacies and Tirzepatide, the Alliance for Pharmacy Compounding Association for the 503A compounding pharmacies submitted a request or demanded FDA to provide clarification or guidance on the 503A compounding pharmacy's ability to compound Tirzepatide. And on October 17, FDA issued a letter to Alliance for Pharmacy Compounding indicating that FDA intends to treat compounders consistently at this time, meaning that FDA does not intend to take action against compounders, meaning FDA won't take enforcement action against 503A compounding pharmacies. However, the main difference between 503A and 503B in terms of regulation is 503Bs are more regulated by FDA, but 503As are more regulated by the State Board of Pharmacy. And at the same time, as I indicated before, Lilly, sent out cease and desist letters. And also, I believe Lilly a couple days ago filed another lawsuit against the compounding pharmacy stakeholders, indicating that their product, their revenue has been damaged and whatnot. So even though FDA said we're not going to take any enforcement action against 503A as well as 503B, there are still risks to 503A compounding pharmacy, including the Board of Pharmacy perspective and the regulation, and also any potential lawsuit by the manufacturers of the products. And Martha, can you go into the detail about the Lilly situation?
Sure, Jay. Thank you very much for That was a great overview of what's going on. Clearly, there's a war brewing, and it's a David and Goliath contest. And this slide just talks about what Dave just went through about, up until the lawsuits and the FDA's, recent letter. So this contest is against the world's largest pharmaceutical company, Eli Lilly, versus these small pharmacies and spas and clinics. And I think one important thing to mention here is that pharmacies have been compounding forever. Compounding pharmacies, I don't have to tell this audience, but they help patients gain access to difficult to find drugs, such as even cancer medications like cisplatin and methotrexate when they're on shortage. The other thing worth mentioning at the start is that this battle that's between the brand manufacturers and the compounders, patients are clearly caught in the crossfire of this. So it's not just the shortage, or if it's not on shortage, it's the cost and the affordable access to an increasingly important class of drugs. And it's not just this 24 lawsuits that we're seeing and the 21 lawsuits by Novo, but last October, Eli Lilly filed a complaint before the United States International Trade Commission against a number of entities to block them from importing, selling, or distributing Tirzepatide API. And in September, there were these lawsuits, September of 2023. Then in June of 2024, Eli Lilly issued an open letter about the dangers of fake and compounded versions of Tirzepatide. FDA has jumped on the GLP-1 warning bandwagon. First, they issued a warning a while ago about the compounding of the sodium salts rather than the base form. And that was via a letter to the National Association of Boards of Pharmacy. That was early in 2023. Then in May, they issued a warning about adverse events from compounded GLPs. They've issued a warning about counterfeit compounds. Most recently, FDA issued a warning regarding dosing errors made by patients dispensed compounded vials instead of pens. That's, of course, despite the fact that both of these manufacturers, both Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk, have been marketing insulin in vials to patients for decades. In June 26, 2024, FDA issued an alert regarding reports of adverse events it's received related to dosing errors. And then in August of 2024, FDA issued an alert to healthcare professionals regarding just a general warning of serious patient illnesses and deaths linked to poorly compounded drugs in general, not necessarily the GLPs. So in 2024, FDA has issued 3 safety alerts for compounded drugs versus only 1 in 2024. So FDA is clearly feeling the need to act on these safety reports, and they do seem quite poised to do so. On Tuesday, Novo Nordisk, the manufacturer of semaglutide, by the way, the other GLP, which has been on the shortage list, as Dave mentioned, for over 2 years, asked the FDA to bar compounding pharmacies from making compounded versions of semaglutide. They argued that the drug is too complex for the pharmacies to safely make. And they filed a petition with the FDA. They want the drug placed on the FDA's DDC list, which is demonstrable difficulties for compounding lists. And that's basically a list of drugs that compounders are not permitted to make, regardless of the shortages. FDA has been working on that list since 2000. And back in 2000, it created the list and they were challenged as unconstitutional. So those lists were abandoned when FDA lost that case. But then in 2013, with the Drug Quality Security Act, they started to be looked at again. And now in March 20th of 2024, FDA issued a proposed rule which added the drugs to the list, one for the 503As and one for the 503Bs. FDA also identified what criteria it's going to use to add the drugs to the list. And by the way, these lists are opposed by several pharmacy groups. Right now, the lists are directed to 3 categories oral solid coated dosage systems, liposomal products, and hot melt extraction. And none of those are really, used by compounders today. So why now? Why not this proposed rule on the DDC list? It seems to me, my opinion, again, it's a means to open the list back up with something that everybody can accept and then expand it to add other commonly compounded drugs. So it's really a side door approach to limiting compounding. There's tons of comments on this proposed rule from pharmacies, and I won't go into exactly what the premise is, but stay tuned on these DDC lists. We'll see what happens. FDA has indicated that it is reviewing Novo's petition. In the petition, Novo is arguing that compounded versions have either higher or lower potency than is indicated on the label. And they're claiming that the API undergoes a unique process that involves yeast fermentation, ensuring higher purity and consistency. The petition claims that the compounded versions have more impurities. And so basically what they're saying is that something is wrong with the API. Although every certificate of analysis from an API manufacturer must list the impurities greater than a certain percentage. The petition questions the delivery mechanism, vials versus pens, and it points to the Poison Control Center data. Next slide, please. So last year, Lilly reported combined sales of $5.4 billion. There's lots of money on the table, and so the fighting will be furious over who's going to win. There's lots of money to file lawsuits here. There's an extremely large, no pun intended, patient population, obesity, weight loss, cardiovascular disease. Lilly is claiming that it's filing lawsuits to protect patients from unsafe compounded products. So the stakes are very high. On their website and social media posts, several of the defendants in some of the lawsuits, they do refer to Tirzepatide as FDA approved. Other references to the products include generic Tirzepatide and generic Mounjaro, neither of which exist. So, basically, these are some strategies for mitigation for 503As. Never include any reference to any brand product. Never state the compound is generic. Document. Some are adding a disclaimer that the compounds are not FDA approved. They're adding that on a website. Their website. Always ensure the compounding potency and sterility to avoid adulteration and misbranding claims. We all remember the 2012 New England Compounding Center catastrophe, where a compounded injectable steroid killed and harmed many people. And that was really the impetus for the passage of the 2013 Drug Quality Security Act. So the compounding industry is like the airline industry. If there's one event, it affects the entire industry. So quality assurance is key. I would point out that the USP 797 requirements for sterile compounding, they've been made ever more stringent. That was last November with regard to the requirements for sterility, consistency, and beyond use date. As far as API vetting, most API comes from overseas. For example, there's at least 28 companies, mostly in China, that are registered with the FDA to produce or distribute semaglutide. And a compounder must have a valid certificate of analysis from the API manufacturer. So it's important for you to check the FDA API manufacturer database to make sure that they're registered with the FDA. So the last thing on the slide, what about patents? So the question of patents, it wasn't really an issue when the drug was on the FDA shortage list because the drug wasn't commercially available. And so essentially a copy provision pertains to a commercially available drug. So the claims for patent infringement for drugs that are on shortage and not commercially available would likely have not, prevailed at all. And that's because of the brand company's failure to meet demand for the drug. And that would impact the damages award, which is based on lost profits. But with this much money on the table, the combined sales of 5.4 billion, one has to wonder whether the companies actually care about damages from any of these lawsuits. A second reason why their claims for patent infringement against these compounders will not prevail is that the FDA guidance on compounding drugs, it makes no distinction for a patented drug. And if Congress had intended to prohibit the compounding of drugs that are covered by a patent but in shortage, the FDA guidance would have stated that. So the issue is significant here, but it wasn't in the past because most compounded drugs are old, cheap generics, but the GLPs are under patent protection. So there is a moderate risk of patent infringement lawsuit being filed in the future by a GLP manufacturer against a compounding pharmacy. For example, Eli Lilly could try to assert a patent that it holds to the drug itself. However, keep in mind that none of the lawsuits have named a single patent, either on the semaglutide side or on the tirzepatide side. Neither have the cease and desist letters given a single patent number. So, that's something to keep in mind. The patent lawsuits are very expensive to litigate, and the patent lawsuit can cost between 2.3 and 4 million, but when we're talking about 5.4 billion, it may not be significant. Such a lawsuit would take 1 to 3 years to reach trial. So that's something else to keep in mind. The other thing to keep in mind is just because FDA says that they're not going to be enforcing anything doesn't necessarily mean that an entity won't get sued for patent infringement. Next slide, please. So, I'm sorry, just want to talk a little bit about the focus of the recent lawsuits because they are different. These recent cases that are brought by Eli Lilly, they're aiming at the premise of prohibiting compounding itself. These recent lawsuits, Lilly claims to be bringing these actions to protect American consumers from direct patient safety risks. One of the lawsuits was brought against an API seller where the tirzepatide is research grade. It has to be pharmaceutical grade. One of the defendants allegedly sold tirzepatide direct to consumer without a prescription. So those are clear-cut, issues that are, violative. And if those can be proved, then those cases will be successful. But one of the cases that's a bit broader is that Lilly's trying to make a broader legal strategy that the entities are mixing with the drug with different other drugs like vitamin B12. And they're saying that is not proven to be safe. And then the fact that none of these, the combination is not proven as safe and effective. Well, frankly, no compounds are FDA approved as safe and effective because they're exempt from that requirement specifically under 503A. So they're statutorily exempt from the new drug approval provisions. So I'm not sure how successful that argument is going to be. The Lilly is also arguing that research use only, and so FDA that the API for one of the sellers is for research use only, and FDA may be getting poised for enforcement action there. The third target of these lawsuits is a telehealth company that's engaged in repackaging an oral compounded product under a brand name. They gave this, product a brand name So they're rebranding an existing drug, and that can be problematic. Lilly is claiming again that the oral tirzepatide is unsafe, that it's not FDA approved, and the branding leads to consumer confusion that the product is FDA approved. So the Eli Lilly strategy right now seems to be targeting smaller companies, one that it can make an example of when they cave because of lack of money, and they'll sign significant settlement agreements. They're trying to build legal precedent. They're trying to make good on the cease and desist letters. If you get one of those cease and desist letters, please reach out to an attorney. Please don't just, blow it off, because they are following through on them, as we see recently. And they're targeting mixtures and rebranding. So, they're also challenging the oral formulations as kind of an investigational product. So all of this is being done in the name of patient safety. And the lawsuits are definitely, especially these recent lawsuits where they're going right to the heart of compounding, saying that compounds are not safe and effective. That's making the landscape a little bit more uncertain for compounding pharmacies. The other thing is the interesting focus that's on direct-to-consumer sales. And just I'd mentioned that in September of 2024, the brand company began selling low-dose tirzepatide directly to consumers in an effort to compete with direct telehealth providers. So stay tuned. The situation is fluid, and there's a lot happening, and that's why we wanted to have this brief, it's very brief, webinar to just go over a few of the things that are happening. I want to thank you all for joining us today for Frier Levitt's Navigating Uncertainty in Tirzepatide Compounding, Understanding the Current Status for 503A and 503B Compliance. We hope that the session has provided valuable insights and clarity into the recent court ruling. Big thank you today. Forgive me for my voice. I've had a terrible voice for a couple of weeks now. I don't know what's going on. And to all of you for your participation. As I mentioned earlier, a recording of the webinar will be shared with you soon. Feel free to reach out to us directly if you have any questions or you'd like to discuss specific issues. Our contact information remains on the screen for your convenience. On behalf of the Frier Levitt team, thank you again for being part of this session. Have a great day, and we look forward to connecting with you in the future.